Hi everyone, welcome back to Law with Jin, your go-to channel for understanding legal concepts and cases from the UK. I'm Jin, and today we're diving into one of the most fascinating and morally complex cases in the history of UK criminal law, R versus Dudley and Stephens from 1884. This case is famous for its exploration of the necessity defense in a murder trial and its long-lasting impact on our legal landscape in the UK. Let's get started. First, let's understand what criminal law is. Criminal law deals with behaviors that are offenses against the state or society. The primary purpose of criminal law is to maintain order and public safety by punishing those who commit crimes. Unlike civil law, which are disputes between individuals or organizations, criminal law is more concerned with behaviors and actions which are dangerous to our society as a whole. In criminal law, there are two main elements which it consists of: actus reus and mens rea. But what's the difference between them? Well, actus reus is the physical act of committing that crime, while mens rea is only the intention to commit that crime. For someone to be found guilty of a crime, usually both elements of criminal law have to be present. So that must mean a person must have committed actus reus and mens rea. That's why the prosecution has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant committed the act with the requisite intent. But why is this even important? It's important because it means that only the truly guilty are punished, protecting individuals from wrongful convictions. In the UK, criminal cases are handled in a hierarchical court system. What does that even mean? Well, this means that minor offenses such as petty theft and traffic violations are dealt with in the magistrates' courts. These courts are the lowest level of criminal courts. More serious crimes such as murder or rape are tried in the Crown Court, however. Appeals from these courts can be taken to the Court of Appeals and in some cases to the Supreme Court, which is the highest court in the country. This structure ensures that cases are handled by courts with the appropriate level of expertise within them, and that there is a clear path for appeals available, ensuring that justice is served correctly. Now, let's get to it. The case of R versus Dudley and Stephens. In 1884, four men, Thomas Dudley, Edwin Stephens, Edmund Brooks, and Richard Parker, they found themselves adrift after their yacht was wrecked. After being adrift for weeks without food or water, after using up all their rations, Dudley and Stephens were left with only one choice: to kill the youngest crew member and eat him. This was 17-year-old Richard Parker. 4 days after the killing, the men were rescued by a passing ship and returned back to England. Upon their return, Dudley and Stephens openly admitted to their actions, believing that their circumstances would justify their actions. However, they were arrested and charged with murder. The case of R versus Dudley and Stephens went to trial in 1884. The central question was whether the defense of necessity was enough to justify killing Richard Parker. The court had to determine if their dire circumstances justified their conduct, which otherwise would be considered murder. During the trial, the defense argued that the killing was necessary to save their own lives and they had no other choice. This argument raised a significant legal dilemma. Can necessity be a defense to murder? The prosecution, however, maintained that taking an innocent life could not be justified under any circumstances. Thus, the court had to weigh the moral and the legal implications of the case. Ultimately, the court rejected the necessity defense, holding that the killing of an innocent person was not permissible under English law, even if to save oneself. Lord Coleridge, the presiding judge, famously stated that to preserve one's life is generally speaking a duty, but it may be the plainest and the highest duty to sacrifice it. Dudley and Stephens were found guilty of murder. They were initially sentenced to death, but later their sentences were commuted to 6 months in prison, reflecting both the gravity of the crime and the extreme conditions they were in, setting the precedent that necessity is not a defense to murder. This case reinforces the idea that certain moral and legal boundaries cannot be crossed, even in extreme situations. The R versus Dudley and Stephens case had a lasting impact on law, particularly in the discussions around the necessity defense. It's often cited in legal education to show the boundaries of lawful conduct and the importance of maintaining moral and legal standards. This case established a clear boundary that necessity cannot be used as a defense for murder, reinforcing the sanctity of human life in the eyes of the law. Here are some key takeaways from the case. Number 1. The case established that the necessity defense cannot be used to justify murder. 2. It shows how it's important to uphold legal principles even in life or death situations. 3. The ruling served as a precedent in UK law and in other jurisdictions that follow common law traditions. 4. The case influenced public perceptions of law and justice, prompting debates about moral and ethical dimensions of legal decisions. Now, if you're studying this case or similar legal principles, here are a few tips. Number 1. Start by understanding the context. Understanding the historical and factual context of the case can help you understand why certain questions arose. 2. Look at the court's reasoning and the legal principles applied. Which arguments did the judge find persuasive? 3. Consider the broader implications of this case. How does it influence current law and legal thinking? 4. Compare this case with other major influential cases from the UK to see how legal principles have evolved over time. You can find these on my page. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into the R vs Dudley and Stephens case. I hope you found it fascinating and engaging. What do you think about this case? Do you agree with the court's decision? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more fascinating legal insights and in-depth case studies. Let's make law accessible and engaging for everyone. See you in the next video.